Friday Night Wealth Creation course. Have you guys ever had technical difficulties to the point where it was just ridiculous? We just had that. So we're streaming. We have Facebook, Instagram. We have Zoom. Do we have Instagram? We don't have Instagram yet. Like I mentioned, we're having technical difficulties tonight. But we are here, and I want to introduce you to my Friday Night Wealth Creation course. If you've never been on before, my name is Jerry. I'm the owner and founder of Wealth DynamX. And what I have done over the last 10 years of my life is I've helped people with their money. Help them pay off debt, help them build budgets, help them invest, help them save, help them become accredited investors. All of that stuff over there about the last decade of my life. And so what I want to share with you tonight is how should I pay off my debt? Right, earlier this year, probably I think the first week of New Year's, we kind of started this series of like goal setting for 2020 and what are the struggles people are running into. And I started thinking about what are the things that I had good intentions, like I wanted to do the right thing, I wanted to win with money. With well intentions, I made mistakes. What were those things? And so these are the last couple courses we've done. The first one was investing in my 401k plan. Super good intentions. I want to do the right thing. Bad idea, right? Last week we did college savings. Again, really good intention, but not a good idea. Not a good place to put money in a college account. This week, paying off debt. Okay, a lot of times I see people that have the best intentions focused on, I need to pay off my debt. I need to get rid of it, which is a good thing. Like that's a right thing to want to do. However, what I learned is there's a way to do it where I build wealth, and there's a way to do it where I actually inhibit my ability to build wealth. Okay, and I'm not saying don't pay off debt, but I want to share with you what I learned. Now, a little bit of my backstory. I started out without very much money. I started out without investors, without any of the stuff you see people talking about on social media today that you know, you build business and you have all this stuff backing you. We didn't do the WeWork model. Okay, so I had debt initially when I started my business, and so I was always torn between, do I go expand or do I pay off debt? Which one do I do? And what's the priority and what's the methodology? And so I spent a lot of time really researching what worked for me and what didn't, and what works for other people and what doesn't. And then finally I looked at what are wealthy people actually doing? Like historically, if we look back at wealthy people, if we look back at how they handled it, what did they do when they paid off debt? And also today, what are financial institutions doing? A lot of the wealthy people operate the same way financial institutions operate. So I started noticing this debt thing, and people struggle with this. I'm going to go ahead and share with you some stats tonight, but I want to really quick just like break down the barrier. Debt is the number one financial struggle that the average American has. It is the most common financial struggle that we all go through. More so than investing, more so than college saving, more so than anything else, the most common financial struggle that we all have is debt. No one talks about it though. You don't have people share with you like, hey, my debt to income ratio is so bad that I can't qualify for a house. Or my payments are not saving money. People never have that conversation. And the thing is that debt is usually used to buy things that make us look good. So I can be killing myself financially, but I can appear like I'm doing really well because of debt, right? So I want to go ahead and like lower the barrier. Like this is an okay zone. We're going to talk about it. We're talk about debt. Don't feel wrong for having debt. If you're in the false social media crowd of, well, debt builds wealth, like it doesn't always build wealth. Sometimes it just builds credit cards and interest that you pay, and then you never build wealth because you have it. Okay, so all of these falsities, I want to kind of break them down into the commonality of what is debt. Now, really quick, here's some of the facts. Debt is something that's owed. Okay, debt is something that is owed. Owed means that I have to give it to you. It was yours, I borrowed it, I owe it back to you, I need to give it to you, I better pay up. That's debt. It's something that's owed, or it's something that is bound to pay or perform to another. Okay, so I'm going to owe debt, I'm bound to pay it, and perform that debt to another person. And one of the quotes I think about, I learned this quote early on in life, it's from the Bible. Okay, the borrower is slave to the lender. The borrower is slave to the lender. Now that is a true statement. The borrower is slave to the lender. If I borrow money from you, I have to pay it back. Okay, in some form, that is slavery. Like I do have to pay it back. That's what that quote is trying to say. Now, what that quote is not trying to say is never use debt. That's reading into it too much. Right? It just says the borrower is slave to the lender. That's a factual statement. If I sign up for a 30-year mortgage on a house that I owe, all that money, I better pay it off. I have to, or they're going to take the house away. I'm slave to the mortgage payment. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to build wealth. It doesn't mean that I'm wrong. It doesn't mean I shouldn't borrow. It just means that factually I better pay back what I owe. Another fact about debt, and again, we're not reading into this any more than what is debt. Debt costs money and interest. That's a factual statement. Debt costs money and interest. Right? If you had a credit card, I've had car loans, credit cards, personal loans, business loans, they all costed interest. That is a factual statement about debt. Right? We're not saying don't leverage. We're not saying do leverage. We're not saying what if you can earn more than the interest. We're looking at debt at face value. Okay, one of the things that I learned that I needed to have the ability to confront finances for what they were. Part of that is not making it more than it is. Debt costs interest. That's a fact. Now that I know that fact, I can operate with it. Right? The other fact, debt costs money in monthly payments. Debt costs me a piece of my income. So again, if I borrow money, I'm going to make a payment back until that's paid back. And until it's paid back, I don't get to keep that money. Part of my story on this, guys, I want to share with you is when I was first starting out, I was 100% Dave Ramsey. Because I was actually endorsed by Dave Ramsey in, I think, was it 7 or 8 different states? Mm-hmm. It was a lot. It was a lot. We paid Dave a lot of money too. And so I was of the philosophy that if I had debt, I needed to pay all of the debt off before I could do anything else. It was the baby steps. I did baby step 1 and I had my $1,000. Baby step 2 was get debt free. And I would always get like halfway through baby step 2, then something bad would happen. I would have nothing in my savings but $1,000. Guess what would happen? I would go right back in debt. So I was in this parallel universe of always going between saving my $1,000, paying off debt, saving my $1,000, paying off debt, and I would continually reset over and over and over because I didn't have savings. After Dave, I moved on to looking at like more like prosperous ways of thinking, like what if that debt makes me money, or what if I had different opportunities? And I polarized all the way over to like don't pay off the debt. Almost like the Robert Kiyosaki, like the over leverage kind of mindset. The problem with that wasn't workable either. Okay, I don't want to be so overextended and making this tiny little margin that if anything dips, I'm ruined. Right? So debt costs money in monthly payments. I do want to pay it off. That's a correct thing to want to do. That's called yield. What is the earning? Okay, if I pay off the debt, I earn this much money back in payments that I used to make towards the debt. Investments have an earning, right? An investment that pays a cash flow or a dividend, that's called an earning ratio. So what is the earnings ratio for my debt? If I pay off a $10,000 debt that's costing me $3,000 a year in payments, that's going to be a 30% yield. Go find a 30% yield literally anywhere else. You're not going to. So paying off debt can be a good investment because it costs me money, right? So again, it's facts about debt. It's not reading into it. It's not emotionalism. It's not theories and strategies we've heard from other people and influencers and talking heads. What do we know to be true? The other fact we know to be true is debt costs money in future opportunity costs. Okay, what is a future opportunity cost? Let's think about that. Future, so it means it's not happening right now, it's later. Opportunity, like something I could have the ability to do, cost, it took from me. So it took a potential thing that I could do, it took that away from me because I had debt. Has anyone ever had debt to the degree where you had to pass up on something you really wanted to invest in or really wanted to get involved in financially and you couldn't because of the debt? I've had that. It's not fun. That's future opportunity cost. That's just on the fact that I have debt. What about the money, the monthly payment? There's future opportunity cost there. What about the interest? There's future opportunity cost on every dollar that I'm paying an interest instead of earning an interest. So we know debt costs us future opportunity. That's a true statement. Debt can be used in a way that it pays for what it costs. That's also a true statement. Debt can be used in a way that it pays for its costs. Meaning I could get debt that pays for itself. I could do a real estate transaction where I have a mortgage and I have debt, but the rental income surpasses that and I make money on it. So that's another true statement. And then also, debt can be used in a way that it does not pay for its costs. Most of us, not paying for its costs. The car payment, the house, the credit cards, the timeshare that we put on our credit card, the Disney World trip, like that's not paying for its costs. So all of this stuff, like I want you to think about some of the statements we hear about debt. Always have debt, never have debt, use other people's money, always leverage, never leverage, debt. There's good debt, there's bad debt. All of that's false. Debt is something that is owed, that you're bound to perform or pay to another. It costs us money in interest. It costs us money in monthly payments. It costs us money in future opportunity. And even though all of these things are true, it can still be used in a way that pays for itself. Or it could be used in a way that does not pay for itself. Mike, have you heard of good debt versus bad debt?
Yep.
What's your description of like good when you've heard people explain good debt versus bad debt?
Usually they're talking about that debt that produces income for them.
Yeah.
Usually is considered good debt, and bad debt's consumer debt.
Yeah. So good debt, people have said good debt pays for itself, it produces income. Bad debt's consumerism. If I use debt in a way that it pays for itself, is that really about the debt, or is that more about my financial intelligence? That's really about my behavior and my intelligence. It has nothing to do with the debt. This is still the same debt. Debt is debt is debt is debt. This is me being educated and making a better decision. Versus if I utilize debt, like Mike mentioned, in a way that's consumer-based and it doesn't pay for itself, it's not income producing, that's not bad debt, that's called bad decision. Okay, it has nothing to do with like labeling the debt and making the debt's amoral. It means that it has no evil intention, it's got no emotion, it has no spirit, it's got no morals, it's got no ethics. It's literally a math equation. How do I interact with it? That's what makes something good or bad. Am I smart? Do I do the right things? Or am I financially illiterate and I do the wrong things? And I've been financially illiterate, so if you're watching and you're sitting in debt, I don't want you to sit there and feel like you're wrong. I wasn't taught any of this stuff. Until I learned this, like I struggled with it, right? So here's some of the myths. The first myth is that, like we said, debt is bad. Debt's not bad. Debt's never murdered someone. Debt's not menu. It's a math equation. Again, debt is not bad. It's amoral. It means that it has no good or bad. It's neutral. So this is a myth, but we're told debt is bad. How does it, like Lexi, when you hear debt is bad, like what does that make you, from a behavior standpoint, what does that make you feel like?
It makes me feel wrong.
Makes you feel wrong. Debt's bad, don't use it. Okay, but then you go get a mortgage. How confusing is that? Don't use debt, but it's okay to have a mortgage. So to use some debt, so then we have to make sure that we justify, well, there is some good debt. You guys see how we came up with this? There's some good debt, but there's also bad debt. Debt's not bad. So that gets rid of the, you can still get a mortgage because that's a good debt, or there's this debt that's bad. It's just decisions. Does the decision make you money or does it make you lose money? And that has nothing to do with debt. I can do that with expenses. I can do that with investments. I can do that with literally everything. The next one is never use debt. I grew up in this school of thought. I was telling people literally pay cash for your house. Never use debt. Why would I say never use debt? Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and isolate Dave Ramsey as an example. Okay, not to make anyone wrong, but I want to actually study this backstory. Okay, Dave Ramsey went bankrupt. Why did Dave Ramsey go bankrupt? Dave Ramsey went bankrupt because he was flipping houses and he was overextending himself on loans and not being smart. He'll be the first to admit that to you. If you study his story at all, he will say that he did stupid things with debt. So do you guys know who Gary Keller from Keller Williams is? You heard of Gary Keller? So Gary Keller is a billionaire. Billionaire, invented Keller Williams Realty. He's the founder. He sat down with Dave Ramsey one time. They actually had lunch together. This was at a Keller Williams event. And Gary sat down with Dave. Dave was their keynote speaker. And Gary said, and he was pouring a bottle of wine. Gary said, Dave, this wine I'm pouring, this is like debt. Okay, I can have wine because I'm not an alcoholic. He said, you can't have debt because you were an alcoholic with your debt. That's literally what he told Dave Ramsey. So this never use debt mentality, we've got to really look at like, how true is that? Absolutes are unattainable, so it's not true. We know that's for a fact. So we look at, why would someone say that? It's usually their own emotional attachment to a poor decision. Again, debt is bad, poor decision, that they're then enforcing on other people. So I'm saying, look at when should you use debt, not never use debt. When should you use debt? Don't use it if it hurts you. We can all agree with that, right? Okay, but what if you knew it could help you and you knew there was not going to be a downside? Then you would use it, hence your mortgage. So we can't say never use debt. It doesn't work. Always use debt. This is the other one. Robert Kiyosaki, OPM, always use debt. I've had people literally get on my live streams in all caps. I could tell they were screaming, savers or losers, like always use leverage, like all this stuff we hear on social media that sounds really cool. But in practical application, I guarantee you, Robert Kiyosaki does not run his company on other people's money. He runs it on cash flow and profit, which is his money. So always use debt doesn't work either. There's times where you shouldn't use debt. We can't polarize and isolate. The other fact or the other myth here is that there's good debt and bad debt. We kind of broke that down. There's no good debt and bad debt. There's good decisions and bad decisions. It's okay for me to borrow as long as I can make payments. This is actually where I first got into debt. Who's heard that or thought that before? It's okay to borrow as long as I can make payments. Mm-hmm. I can afford the monthly minimum. That's also a myth. Okay, this is how you build yourself into consumer financial slavery. Meaning I owe so much of my paycheck to banks and institutions that I can't afford to pay myself bills. I can't afford to pay my own savings and my own investments. That's where this starts. Okay, here's my rule. It's okay to borrow as long as I knew how I was going to pay it back before I borrowed it. That is the only time it's okay to borrow. It's not about can I maintain the monthly payment. It's what is my strategy to pay this entire thing back before I even to make the decision to borrow the money. Because again, we need to think like these giant institutions. They don't just borrow money on a dream. They're not like, oh yeah, we can afford the monthly payment, that's fine. They're like, okay, how are we going to get rid of this so that our balance sheet improves and we get our cash flow back? We need to be thinking about the exit strategy before we enter. The other myth is I have debt, so I need to pay it off at all costs. This kind of reminds me of the dog that'll chew its leg off if it gets stuck in the trap. That's what this is you're fighting and fighting and fighting. I've done this before, and like I said, I would pay everything towards my debt, and then I would realize that I had no money saved, so then I would end up right back in debt because I didn't save. So we have to look at, if I have debt, I have to pay it off at all costs. At all costs. Debt is a cost. So look at this from a mathematical standpoint. If debt costs me 13% interest or 5% interest, how much do I need to be able to have in savings to avoid going back? That's a cost, saving. Okay, so if I'm avoiding debt at all costs, if I'm going to do that permanently, it means I need to have savings first. And then finally, I cannot invest until I pay off my debt. This one I really want to dive into tonight. There's this kind of, I don't know if I should call it a mindset or just an attitude that if you're paying off debt, like you're financially like kind of a loser and you're behind and you're focusing on the wrong things and you need to be out of scarcity mode. Guys, paying off debt is an investment. If I am paying off debt, it requires a principal value. It saves me an interest rate. It pays a yield on what it frees up and I gain my cash flow back. Investments do that exact same thing. Therefore, if I have 10 grand in debt that I can pay off that has a 12% rate and it's costing me $200 a month, and I know that's a guaranteed return that I'm going to make by paying that off, that is an investment. And if I make that decision, I'm not in scarcity mode. I'm not making the wrong decision. I'm not thinking small. This is a financially intelligent decision. Okay, but just because I saw someone on YouTube that says never pay off your debt, use it, cash is trash, you should always have this, always leave your debt outstanding, borrow, like that guy ultimately is not going to come sit down with me and help me out once I get in. So how far do I really want to go with his advice? He's not going to sit down with me and be like, all right, cool, you got in this mess, now let me help you get out. Right? So this is an investment. The myth that I can't invest until I pay off my debt, that's a myth because debt being paid off is an investment. You need to have the mindset that I'm making an investment. I'm not just in like consumer scarcity mode. All right, so here's the deal, guys. Perception versus reality. This is called Should I Pay Off My Debt? I broke this down on a chart and I want to really break this down for you guys to see. This is what I was thinking the entire time I was paying off debt. Okay, so I was paying off debt. I thought I was becoming debt-free. That's what I thought. I was like, man, I'm going to pay off the car. I'm going to pay off the credit card. Lexi and I actually paid off a car. I would say that's probably the worst financial decision we ever made was paying off a vehicle. But in the moment, we were like, man, we're becoming financially free. This is so cool. This is awesome. The reality of the situation was I'm increasing the likelihood of future debt. Like I talked about, because I don't have savings, now I'm going back in debt. It's almost guaranteed to happen. Okay. The other one is my mindset was I'm paying off debt. That was what I was focused on. But the reality of the situation was that I'm not saving money. Just because I didn't see that doesn't mean it wasn't happening. And it would show up, like I said, every time something bad came up or an emergency appeared. I would go back in debt because, yeah, I was paying off debt, but I also was not saving money. I was avoiding paying interest. So I was pushing everything I had into debt, everything I could, so that I could avoid paying interest, but I was paying opportunity cost. Okay, what could I do with that money instead? If there's a better decision, if I could have that in savings, where would that be? Where would that be for me today? If I put this, like guys, I'm telling you, if I put this all in my sacred account first, like way back in the day, I would have so much money in there right now because its entire amount is compounding for me. So I've got to look at what's the opportunity cost I'm paying by avoiding that interest. I thought I was becoming more financially stable. That was my perception. Because I have less debt, I'm reducing my debt, I'm reducing my risks, I'm reducing my interest, I'm freeing up my cash flow. Now I'm becoming more financially stable. I was defining that by being debt-free. But I was actually becoming less solvent. Solvent meaning I have money, right? Hence again, why I would end up back in debt. I was not solvent. I didn't have money. Yeah, I was debt-free, or I was becoming more stable, but really I wasn't solvent. And then finally, I thought I was freeing up my income, but I was actually losing more of my income towards debt. If I took the amount of money that I was paying towards debt as a percentage of my income, I was actually losing. Because that income wasn't free. It was still going to the bank. It was still going to a financial institution. Guys, I can't get wealthy if a financial institution has all my money. And then finally, my mindset was that it's either this or I keep the debt and keep paying off interest. So later on, I learned about what I'm going to talk about tonight, the sacred account. I can pay off my debt and simultaneously save money into the account and have that money working for me while the debt's being paid off. Now I'm thinking like an investor. When I started doing that, guess what? I actually was even more excited about paying off debt. Anyone ever paid off a card or a loan before? Mm-hmm. Okay, the feeling you like, man, that's cool. Like the relief you get. Imagine having that and then simultaneously knowing all of that money is still at work for me right now. Not only is the debt gone, but I'm earning 3 to 5% every single year. I'm getting an interest rate of 3 to 5% compounding every single year on that money, even though I just used it to pay off my debt. Way better feeling. So that was really like my mindset shift, and what I went through as I was learning about all this is it's not just about debt freedom. That's a big part of it. Yes, get rid of it, but there's a right way to go about it and a wrong way to go about it. So let's break this down. How did I get into debt? Has anyone ever asked that before? Think about it. Have you sat there and wondered, not from a victim mentality of like, why is this happening to me, but from the standpoint of like actually backtracking, where did this start? How did I get into debt? Okay, this is a hard one to confront. I had to confront this, and I want to have you confront it if you're willing to. I borrowed money that I didn't have. Okay, I borrowed money that I did not have and could not pay back right away. That's how I got into debt. That was me. That's a behavior issue. That's not a credit card problem. That's not a thing that happened to me. I was talking to a guy today, and he's totally irresponsible for his debt. I'm going to file bankruptcy, and they'll figure it out later. 3 years, my credit's screwed, but at least I don't have to pay it back. I didn't help the guy because I don't help people that steal. I borrowed money, and I did not have the money to pay it back. That is how I got into debt. It wasn't yeah, there was a circumstance and a reason why I borrowed it, but at face value, that was why I borrowed it. I borrowed it because I didn't have money. Washing machine broke, great, but I should have had the savings. That's why I borrowed debt, because I didn't have the savings. So-and-so went in the hospital, I have medical bills, it's because I didn't have savings. It has nothing to do with the circumstance. This is the hard reality I had to confront. Every single cent of debt that I had was my fault. That I had to take it out. I put myself in a position where I had to take out debt. It wasn't anyone else, it was me. And the interest that I complained about and the banks that I hated, that was all the byproduct of my own decision in the first place. So why did I get into debt? We talked about how. Why did it happen? Okay, what is the why, the reason why? Number one, I lacked money. Okay, I did not have enough money saved, and I was not saving a great enough rate of my income. Okay, I didn't have enough in the bank, in my savings, and I was continually not saving enough. It was a repeated behavior, like over and over and over. I could have saved more, but I didn't. I could have put more money away, but I didn't, right? Secondly, debt is a symptom. Debt is a symptom of not having money. So when I look at my debt, the debt isn't why I have the debt. See, a lot of times I didn't get past the fact that I had debt. The debt wasn't the reason why I had debt. That was the reason. The debt was the symptom. And then the cause of debt is lack of money. That's the symptom, that's the cause. The cause of lack of money, this one stung when I learned this one. The cause of having a lack of money is bad financial control and lack of value in the marketplace. That stings, huh? If I would have had better control over my finances and I had been more valuable in the marketplace, A, I would have kept more of my money, and B, I would have made more of it. And C, I wouldn't have had debt. That's why debt happens, guys. So it's not like yes, credit cards suck. Yes, interest rates are out to get you and they are stacked against you. But the solution is just don't mess with it. Like, don't get involved in, again, having to borrow money and not being able to pay it back right away. It doesn't mean I don't borrow money. It means now when I borrow money, I pay it back right away. I'm going to take advantage of that system, and I'm going to make sure that I am winning because I'm solvent. But if I'm in a position where I have lack of money, it means I have bad financial control. Control is the ability to start, change, and stop. Meaning that I can't start, change, and stop my expenses. I can't start, change, and stop my income. I can't start, change, and stop my savings. I can't start, change, and stop my investments. I am out of control. And the lack of value in the marketplace, income comes from exchange. So the equation for debt is lack of income, too much expense. Lack of surplus, too much expense. Lack of savings, too much expense. The lack started with my value. Okay, so a lot of my debt, when I looked at it and I look back at it, it's like, man, I could have been working harder. I could have been putting more hours. I could have been more service oriented. But instead, and look at just the credit card statement. What's on there? Trips, food, outings, clothing. They're all things that serve me and no one else. So the mindset behind debt still is lack of value. This one was very hard for me to get my mind wrapped around. And when I realized it, it was freeing because no one had ever told me that before. So I could permanently solve my debt problem by A, getting out, but B, making sure that I'm always valuable. I'm not in it just to enjoy stuff for myself and protect me. I'm in it for other people. I'll actually go help some other guy. I talked to a guy the other day in Britain for an hour. Guys, I don't work with people, and we can't help someone in Britain with our sacred accounts. But I stayed on a phone call with him and helped him out with information because that's valuable to the marketplace. He didn't do business with me. An hour later, someone did. That's how this thing works. So what are my options if I have debt? I can go into collections. Okay, so I can just not pay. Okay, I can just not pay. I can have my phone blown up all the time. And I've been there before. It's not fun. I can file bankruptcy. Okay, I can go to the court, to the law, and basically through the court system restructure my debt so that I can't be touched and I can get back on my feet within a certain amount of time. I can do consolidation loans, meaning I'm going to borrow more money in order to bunch together all of the various loans I have to hope to get maybe a better interest rate. I can do a settlement program. I can pay it off slowly forever, which is what a lot of people do. They just pay the minimum, a little bit when they can to feel better about it, but still they're going to have that thing longer than they have their kids. I can pay it off highest interest rate to lowest interest rate and try and save interest. I can pay it off smallest balance to largest balance, try and free up cash flow, or I can just keep on borrowing. Those are my options. Collections, bad idea. Bankruptcy, bad idea. Consolidation loans can be a good idea, but usually this person ends up worse. The reason why is we didn't change the behavior that got them there in the first place. It's like taking an alcoholic and then instead of helping them not be an alcoholic, giving them another substance to be addicted to instead. Like, you're just giving them more of a bad thing. It's not actually changing their behavior. Settlement programs, this can help if you're okay with your credit being banged up for a few years. Okay? Paying it off slowly forever, terrible decision. Don't do that. Paying highest interest to lowest interest, you could do that, but usually these people quit because it's demotivating. And then paying off smallest balance to largest, this is actually the number one way I would recommend doing it. Borrowing more also. Okay, those are our options. And I list all of this stuff out to help you realize what I realized: I did have options. Okay, part of my option was whether I was going to be ethical about this or not. Okay, I'm not going to file bankruptcy because I'm not unethical. I did borrow the money. I'm not a coward. I'm not going to say, hey, I stole from you, I'm not paying it back. Because at the point I borrow money and don't pay it back, I am a thief. Period. Like, if I borrowed it and didn't pay it back, I'm stealing. That's what that is. It doesn't matter how I justify it. Oh, that was Bank of America. They rip everyone off. They deserve it. Like, I still stole. So I'm not going to do unethical solutions. So I'm looking at programs like consolidation, settlement, or paying it off. Okay, the difference between a bankruptcy and a settlement, by the way, so if you guys don't, bankruptcy is literally like me going through the legal system and forcing the bank's hand at it. Collections, I'm just not paying it off at all. Settlement programs is actually me entering into a negotiation with the creditor. They're agreeing to the entire thing. Okay, they actually like settlement programs. So I've got to look at, like, am I an ethical person? Am I trying to do this in an ethical means? And the way that I handle this will be whether or not I go back in. Because I guarantee you the guy that goes into collections or just like wipes it off and doesn't pay it, he's probably going to end up back there again. So the realities of debt, check this out. The average American has $137,063 in debt. That's the average American, which means some people have more, some people have less. Right, 137,000. I want you to think about, how much money do I have in my savings right now? Okay, how much money do I have in my retirement right now? How much money do I have in assets? Is it more than 137,000? If it's not, I don't have a positive net worth. I have a negative net worth, which means I'm not building wealth. So this is important to realize. If I have this much debt, I better have more in assets. I have to make sure I'm focused on that. The balance sheet, assets minus liabilities, that is an important equation for you to become financially free. Secondly, the average American pays 30 to 50% of their income towards debt. Okay, what's the savings rate we tell people to do, Mike?
40%.
40%. I can't do 40% because I'm giving the bank 40%. Okay, the bank understood the 40% rule. They were like, all right, I'm going to get 40% of my income and 40% of Jerry's income. 40% rule, right? That's not how it should work. You should actually be paying yourself 40%. Imagine, and before you go into Doubtland, like, that's what I did. I was like, I can't do that. But imagine if you could. Where would you be right now if you were saving 40% of your income? That means if you're a family making $10,000 a month before taxes, you are saving $4,000 a month. How incredible would that be? You're saving $4,000 a month. Now imagine if we took it a step further and we said you're going to save $4,000 a month and invest it. How much money would I have then? Now here's the issue. The median wage is 61K. Median wage is 61K. Let's say 30 to 50% is my debt to income ratio. That means it's an average of 40% of my income that goes towards debt. That's $24,000 a year. $24,000 a year that's going towards debt based on that income. All right, so I have to really look at, like, over the long haul, over 20 years, guys, that's $6 million. I didn't invest it. That's just letting it sit there. Just by me not having that high debt to income ratio and saving 40% like I should be, I would have $6 million over the next 20 years. See, we have this retirement crisis, like people aren't saving enough for retirement and they're getting there and running out of money. I'm telling you, the retirement crisis is actually starting here. I'm being told to give all of my money to financial institutions and then hope I have enough left over when I'm 60. And then I'm turning 60 and it's not there and I'm wondering what happened. Well, all of it went to my mortgage and my car payment and my credit card and my student loan. And none of it went into me. And if I did save it, it went to Wall Street. That's another financial institution. And I'm hoping at 60, these guys that have been preying on me for the last 40 years of my life are going to take care of me. It's just not going to happen. So how to get out of debt? Check out, this is the method we use. So first, we're going to fund a sacred account. Okay, sacred account is life insurance. It's a life insurance policy. I can save money into it. It allows me to compound my money at 3 to 5% every single year and then borrow 75 to 95% of that money at only 2 to 3% interest. I'm compounding my money. Let me repeat that, guys. I'm compounding my money at 3 to 5% every single year. And then I'm able to then pull out 70 to 95% of what's in there at a 2 to 3% interest rate. Do the math on that. I'm making 3 to 5, I'm paying 2 to 3. I'm being paid to borrow my own money is what I just shared with you. Okay, so I'm gonna borrow my own money, get paid to borrow my own money. What am I borrowing my own money for? I'm paying off my debt with it. Okay, so I'm gonna line my debts up, smallest balance to largest balance. The reason why we go for this method, smallest balance to largest balance, is we're freeing up cash flow. Those smaller debts, when I pay them off, the payment frees up, and then I can take that payment and put it back into my sacred account and then go after the next one. Okay, so I'm going smallest balance to largest balance. I'm only paying minimums on my debt. I'm putting all of my excess money into my sacred account, all of it. Okay, again, the reason why is as soon as it goes in there, it begins compounding at 3 to 5% every year. I'm guaranteeing that that money will have future growth, and it's going to pay me while I'm using it to pay off my debt, and I'm going to be able to borrow against it at a lower interest rate than I'm earning, making a positive spread. It's a no-brainer. So I'm going to borrow against the sacred account, like I mentioned, as soon as I have enough, and I'm going to pay off my smallest debt balance. That payment gets freed up, I pay myself back, the whole thing repeats. It's a continuous cycle. And I'm going to show you the math. I want to point out, guys, my debt for me. My debt is an asset for the creditor. The person that I owe, that's not a debt for them, that's an asset, which means that if I'm paying off debt, I'm actually in asset acquisition mode. If I'm in asset acquisition mode, that means I'm an investor. If I'm an investor, I need to be thinking about my return, not about how can I get into the quickest deal the fastest, even though it's going to put me at risk. Do you see the difference in mindset there? I would never hastily jump into an investment just for the sake of speed. But as an investor acquiring my own debt back from a creditor, why am I hastily jumping into that investment just for the sake of speed? Like, as an investor, I want to approach it slowly, and I want to study the numbers, and I want to do the thing that long-term builds me the most wealth, not the thing that's quick. So here's the results. If I do this method, I pay off all of my debt. I save interest. I free up my monthly income. Those are natural to paying off debt. Those are all given, right? But the difference is that my money was growing for me the entire time while I was using it to pay off my debt. Okay? I also automatically have savings waiting for me when I'm out because that money was still growing there. And I'm solvent while I pay off the debt so that I don't have to go back in. Do you see how much better that plan is? That's like times better. Now here's some of the math. This is going to look really kind of weird and sketchy initially because it's just a bunch of spreadsheets, but I'm going to zoom in for you. How's that look, Lexi?
It's kind of blurry on my end, but it may just be my internet.
Can you see that okay?
It's kind of dark.
Kind of dark? Okay. So what this is an analysis. I'm going to point out the numbers to you guys. So this is a real life case study, real client that I just helped. I put together his debt payoff. Before working with us, this was his method. Okay, so he had $133,000 in debt. Okay, $133,000 in debt. Credit unions, Stanford medical or college loans, mortgages, car payments, all that stuff. Interest rates ranging from 0 as high as 14%. He was going to be in debt till 2050, and he was going to pay $596,000 in interest. This is pre-Wealth Dynamics. This is basically like, and he didn't know any of this because he's never lined his debt up and looked at it. So he just knows I have debt, I'm trying to pay it off. He doesn't know, like, imagine how dooming that feels. I'm going to pay $600,000 on my interest, and I'm going to be in debt for the next 30 years. That's just like a feeling of dread, right? So we showed him like, hey, this is actually what's happening right now. This is what we did instead. So we did the sacred account. The way that this works. Here we go. So we basically lined up sacred account. We're going to do the loan thing with the sacred account. As soon as we have enough built up in the sacred account, we're going to borrow against it and we're going to pay off Stanford. Okay, when we pay off Stanford, we're freeing up $323 per month. We were already funding the sacred account with $1,300 a month, so we're going to take that $323. We're going to throw that in there. Now we're putting in $1,333. We're going to pay off Bank of America. Okay, once Bank of America is paid off, we freed up that Bank of America payment. We pay that back to the sacred account. Then we pay off the other Stanford. That frees up another payment, and we continue going down the line, and we pay off the debt. Then we save back into the sacred account until we have enough to pay off the next one. We keep on doing that. The result, check this out. Interest paid, 28 grand. This guy's gonna save over $500,000 in interest. He is out of debt on everything in 2027. And at the end of this cycle, he will have 168 grand in cash waiting for a sacred account. Okay, scenario A, 30 years in debt, $500,000 in interest. And look at what he freed up. His monthly payment, he's now got $3,397 a month freed up in his budget. Imagine how much wealth he can build just because he doesn't have debt now. So scenario A, for the next 30 years, he's gonna miss that $3,300 a month. He's gonna pay $500,000 interest. He'll be in debt for 30 years. He'll have nothing in the bank when he gets out, or we do this. This is the right way to pay off. Mathematically, this works. We've gotten people so much progress with this method. Okay, so I wanna show you a little bit about how we're gonna do this. So the first step, action steps here. Number one is stop acquiring debt. You've gotta stop borrowing. Like, I had to stop borrowing. That was hard for me. Like, for some reason, when you have a card, it's easy to go and swipe stuff. It's easy to not think about transactions. Today on Apple Pay, you don't even have to swipe. Literally, you click your phone twice on the side and you paid for it. Stop borrowing. I had to stop borrowing, stop the bleeding. Then I had to organize my finances. Build a blueprint. How am I actually going to build wealth? How am I looking right now? Where am I trying to get to? What is the out point? What is the difference on where I am and where I want to be at? Then I established my sacred account. Okay, I'm gonna start putting money into this thing. It's gonna build up. While it's building up, I'm lining my debts up smallest, and then I'll begin paying off my debts with the sacred account. I'll pay off the smallest balance one first. While I'm doing this, I'm going ham on my finances. I am pushing my income up. I am pushing my savings rate up. I'm getting rid of things. I'm consolidating so I can aggressively increase my income and my savings and pay my debts off even faster. Okay, we just literally, Mike and I just had a guy come in an hour ago, sat down, showed him his plan. He's gonna start putting $1,000 a month more than he was planning on because he realized that he's in control of how quickly he gets out of debt. This guy's gonna pay off his student loan in 2 months. He'll be debt-free probably in the next 12 months, and then he'll have that entire chunk of money to start socking away to go invest. Okay, so this is a different way of finances. It's not leverage, it's not pay off your debt and live on beans and rice. It's what are institutions and wealthy people doing, and how do we mimic that? How do we do the same exact thing they're doing and do it the way they're doing it? Because apparently it works. It's in the numbers, right? So guys, I'm gonna wrap up here. Thank you so much for hanging with us. I do wanna open this up for any questions we have, any in the studio tonight or online.
Nothing on Facebook. I don't see anything on Zoom so far.
Do we have anything on Instagram? If you guys have any last minute questions, feel free to drop those in the comments before we log out here. I'd love to answer those for you. And if you watch this tonight and you got value out of it, if it helped you, I want to encourage you, share the stream. Okay, we do not charge for these courses. So this is information that's free to anybody. We want to get it out there. If you would like to learn more about what we're doing, you can go to sacredaccount.com. Again, sacredaccount.com. And if you would like to, leave us a Google review as well. Have a great Friday night. We'll talk to you guys next time.